people and their indispensable skills that take companies from ideas to excellence. Especially for emerging startups looking to scale up, there is a critical need to invest in human capital of a company to drive its intellectual capital. However, most startups struggle to hire right, and the tough competition in the current market for top talent is making it even more challenging. In such a scenario, companies who are looking for rapid and consistent growth need to step up their hiring game. But what is the effective hiring formula for companies to attract and retain talent? Good morning, everyone. This is Drishti from People Matters editorial team, and it is great to have you all at this session brought to you by Infido and People Matters. In this session, we will be joined by leaders who will share insights to support business and talent professionals in high growth companies to improve their hiring practices and build an organization fabric where top talent can thrive. And to host and moderate this session, we have with us none other than Tanmay Jain, founder and CEO in Fido. Tanmay Jain was 18 years old when he started in Fido, and ever since then, he has been redefining how companies lead employee experience at work. A change maker, innovator, Tanmay's motto is be a man of character with a bag of memorable experiences instead of mindlessly chasing success. Tanmay, it's great to have you here. Thank you for taking out time for this.
Thank you so much, Drishti. Hi, everyone. Good to see an exclusive community of HR folks. I heard this is a private event only for HR, and I love these. So without further ado, I will now introduce you to our three panelists. I would love to invite Babu Vittal on stage. He is the current CHRO of Vedantu. Vedantu is an edtech startup, recently raised a Series D. There were rumors that Byju's would acquire them, but no, because Vedantu has phenomenal dreams. They have 7,000 employees. Babu is based out of Bangalore. He was the ex-CHRO of Reliance Communications. He was the head HR of ShopClues. And before that, he was at Flipkart as well. What's amazing is the last time we spoke to Babu 2 weeks back, he had 5,000 employees. And today he has 7,000 employees. So there's some crazy activity going on in Vedantu. And a little known fact for all of you is that Babu is extremely passionate about social work, him and his partner, both of them. And that's another topic that we can have a conversation about in the session today. Thank you, Babu, for making it today. Next, I'd love to invite upon Pranali. She's the CHRO of iCertis. Pranali has been working in iCertis, where she's just short of 2,000 employees. She's based out of Pune. They're a contract intelligence platform where they recently raised a Series F, and there's floating news that they might go IPO next year. She was the ex-director HR at Tieto. And a little known fact about Pranali is she loves singing in the bathroom, and her neighbors know that. Thank you, Pranali, for making it today. Next up, we have Zishan Ramlan, right? He's the director and head HR of CoinSwitch Kuber, right? They have 250 employees. They're a crypto exchange, recently raised a Series B. He was the ex-director HR of Intuit, which is rumored to buy MailChimp for $10 billion. And he was also at Infosys before that. A little known fact also about Zishan is that he's also passionate about social work, and he's the founder of a foundation called the Ramlan Foundation. So clearly we have a spectrum of 150 employees to 7,000 employees, a spectrum of crypto, edtech, and contract management. We have so much going on here. So it's a good diverse mix. But the very first question I have, and I would love for the audience to put your questions in the comment section as we go. The very first question I have is, what's on your mind? What's the top thing on your mind right now as we face this great resignation? Because for those of you who don't know, right, great resignation is about two things. Forbes and Microsoft say that 41% of the talent will quit in the coming 1 year, and there is so much fear around that. And 60% of Gen Z working moms and remote hires are struggling, right? So, but what's the first thing, the top thing on your mind? And any panelist can go. So I would love to hear your answers.
Yeah, I think I can go first. Thank you so much, Tanmay, for that amazing introduction. Right. So I was going through the topic and I realized that it's war for talent. And I just want to say that the first thing that comes to my mind is that we shouldn't consider this as a war for talent, because when you consider this as a war for talent, then it's a never-ending battle, right? You talk of compensation, you talk of XYZ benefits, etc., and you may actually compromise on having a culture fit into the organization. So I see this opportunity and this phase as a great way for us to bring best in class employees who fit to our culture and who could stay in for a long period of time. So that's the first thing that I have in mind. The focus clearly should be engaging with your internal employees and also making sure that you bring in the culture fit into the organization.
Got it. Thank you, Zishan. Pranali, you want to go next?
Yes, sure. So, well, iCertis is growing at a phenomenal pace, and what is always keeping me up is how do we help to facilitate this growth, and how do we make it sustainable? Because whether you choose to call it war for talent or otherwise, it's an opportunity as well in several ways, with so many people looking for a change in their current jobs. But I think either ways, what really worries me is how do we get match the pace of growth that we are having? How do we sustain it long term while remaining equitable and fair to the existing iSolutions also? As we bring in people with varied interests, compensation levels, etc. So how do we make sure all of this stays on par? And most important, then, with such a big influx into the organization from a cultural and value standpoint, how do we make sure in this hybrid and remote world, they are all aligned and help us to move forward? So a lot of things emerging from that, but it really, I would say, has been a year that has kept HR on its toes.
Makes sense, Pranali. In fact, very recently I heard that it's relatively easy to manage talent that's in office. It's easy to manage talent that's remote, but when it's mixed, right,
Exactly.
that's when everything gets complicated. But Babu, would love to hear you next.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for a great intro and welcome to all panelists also. Tanmay, what I think is you'll have to accept that this resignations will happen, right? It happens in huge waves, small wave, medium size, we don't know, but that's going to happen. So if we can accept it, then it's easier for us to go and find solutions. Instead of panicking and looking at the number last month is X%, this month it is X plus a small delta, it's not going to be that way. This is going to happen. So it's given acceptance. One more thing I also feel is we are completely at the mercy of candidates. Right? So you could build in an ecosystem around your entire brand, but at this point in time, you are completely at the mercy of candidates. It's a phase. That's what is one thing I'm trying to get into my mind and within my team. It's a challenge, but this is probably what I would say.
No, thank you for sharing that, because when you say, like, it's so relatable when you say we're at the mercy of candidates because it's such a candidate driven market now. But Babu, a follow on question to that I have is clearly you've hired 2,000 people in the last 2 weeks, right? So that's like 1,000 a week. So clearly something's going right. So I do want to ask you a question which has two parts. First is, in this time, right, how are you aggressively hiring talent so fast? What's your sort of formula? And how are you retaining them as well, right? I know we have to embrace resignation, but I'm sure retention is a priority.
So, I mean, nobody has asked me this question, Tanmay, even my boss. But anyway, thanks for this question. See, it comes from within, right? It's just the HR team. If we can relook at all the processes what we have in place, there's tons and tons of improvement we can bring into all the processes what we have. At least about a year and a half back, we've been a fraternity where we create something, fall in love with what we created, and refuse to change. That's been our fraternity. Right? Now, what I see as a change is COVID has kind of ensured that even we have to change. So the tons of process policies what we have, the moment we make it easy and adaptable, I can give you a simple example. Laptop. Only when somebody shows up on the door, like only when someone joins, we ship the laptop. That's been the process, right? Now in COVID times, when you ship something, it takes 3 to 7 days for somebody to get it, right? If you really want the employee to let go of his past organization and start thinking about your organization, ship the laptop 3 or 4 days early. Why are you waiting? Right? So that's a question which we asked ourselves about our process, which helped us to provide a slightly improved experience at the time of join. And so that's one thing which we keep re-looking at our processes, and that's definitely helped us at the time of hiring. I mean, in terms of retention, some of the things what we have been doing, which has helped us, is we took the entire load on the HR team. So generally, when you define a process, say performance review process, I typically refer that as a Delhi wedding. Happens for 2 months. Everybody is engaged. The outcome is very minimal. So can we reduce the time, take the total load on the HR team, keep it very lightweight for the employee? We finished it in around 28, 29 days for our entire eligible population. Right? So if you start relooking at the process, be it entry, be it retention, be it exit, everywhere there is scope for improvement. So that's what I would say to them.
Got it. No, I like the point of going lightweight. It's something we've been talking about as well. However, Vivek Trivedi has a question specifically for EdTech companies that what are the challenges you've been facing, right? And what is the solution for that? Because especially in the EdTech sector, when it comes to hiring.
So the challenges we face today is like it's an open world, right? So candidates, employees, ex-employees, no one thinks about their next opportunity. So the kind of messages they keep delivering in social media, the kind of communication which they deliver in social media really hampers when you go ahead and look for your next candidate. As it is, EdTech has probably become the right route where everybody is targeting and looking at having a go at EdTech. But you come, you experience, when you feel the experience is not good, you go and express yourself in social media. When you start expressing without thinking about any of your future prospects today, it really has a short-term impact on the organization. So what we have started doing is we started engaging more and more with our employees who are leaving so that we could give them a better experience, not in terms of ensuring they don't go to social media. Let them go. So that's their liberty, freedom. But can we give a better experience and reduce that impact, right? So acceptance and reduction of impact is something which has helped us in kind of managing the situation today at all stages.
Got it. No, Babu, that's a wonderful point because very recently we were working on this research around the exit experience itself, right? Where if the exit experience isn't good, people won't even come back, right? Even if they want to, right? So sometimes that aspect is missed, the rejoining rate as well, right? And in fact, one of our customers, Tata, they measure an NPS of exited employees. So it's a phenomenal area to sort of deep dive into. But my next question is for you, Pranali, right? And because what exit reminds me of is there is an exit experience and then there's an onboarding experience, right? Because we have to cover the whole life cycle. So as a company that's scaling so fast, right? So how have you really dealt with the onboarding section of a making sure that everyone's settled in when it comes to hybrid? We spoke about hybrid a while back. And B, making sure that the first 90 days so good that people want to stick around.
Absolutely. So we've onboarded about, close to 1,000 iSurgeons through the pandemic, all remote. So these are iSurgeons who, most of them haven't even been inside of an iCertis office, who've never, met a colleague physically, shaken hands, whatever. So it's obviously then putting a lot of pressure in how do you onboard, because otherwise it's one laptop to another and most laptops look the same. So how do you make that difference? So the easiest thing was to digitize the whole process, the onboarding, the follow-up, even the shadowing parts, etc. And in fact, some of those became a little easier also because for the younger intake that we did, the campus hires, for example, it's easier for them to, shadow on meetings, etc., multiple times. So that part was the easy bit. What was tougher was how do we recreate the whole experience of being in the office, of meeting colleagues, of learning from, cross teams and random interactions. So that's where a number of things we've done. To start with, we made a VR video of our office interiors. And that is something we are sharing with all our new hires, with the idea that they can, actually get a feel of what it is like to be inside of an iCertis office, even if they haven't physically been there. The second is, trying to replicate these random meetings that you do with people outside of your own team. The own team happens, but how do you talk to colleagues you wouldn't otherwise meet virtually? So we are also doing this where we pair them up into groups based on how they join, which is a mix across teams. And then there are a lot of curated social interactions, virtual of course, but those are curated so that they end up interacting with different leaders or different colleagues. There's formal, informal to it. So that is a second thing. And with that, there's a lot that we are investing in storytelling, just to make sure that the culture, the values are also moved and experienced by the new hires. So value workshops, which is helping them to interpret what our forte values would mean to an iSertion. Otherwise, it's just fairness, transparency, which are commonly used in any organization. But what does this mean? The third piece, which I think is getting more and more important as we move into this so-called year of the resignations, is I think to build a purpose. And that is what we are investing in currently with, we're starting with some of our internal leaders, and then it will be part of the regular onboarding process, which is we're going through a series of purpose mindset workshops. We actually are engaging also with one of our long-term consultants with this as well. And we're actually looking at, getting every new hire, every iSertion also to revisit what are their own drivers, what are their motivators, what is the purpose that they have. It's a very nice facilitated LSIP process that we're doing. And the idea is that we then see how that aligns with the purpose of the organization. And I think that's really important at this stage, because as Babu was putting it, it's a crazy world out there. We are at the mercy of candidates. And I think that if there is an alignment, at least there is a likelihood that people will, stick and want to be there for reasons which appeal to them. For example, now I was sharing it before as well, that we also do something like we have a 7 days for humanity, which is 7 extra days off in a year for every iSertion. It's 7 days irrespective of when you join the company, and it's no questions asked. You can use it for any work you do to support the community. And this is where, for folks like, if we had somebody like a Babu or Zishan, who run their own NGOs also, I don't think they'd ever want to leave iCertis, because we support it. And this is apart from, donation matches and everything. So, and this is one example. There are several more. So it's basically, give them a reason to be there, which is other than just the work, and, make it matter.
Thank you, Pranali. It's amazing how your employees can start working with the other two panelists on the call. And I have taken notes for my own team. But a couple of points, like, of course, the 7-day thing, and also the fact that you're investing not just at the time of hiring, which most people do, right? For example, we've discussed the whole bikes and everything going on LinkedIn these days, the BMW bikes for engineers, but also investing once somebody is hired, right? For example, the VR video that you're creating. This also reminds me that Digit Insurance, also a customer there, CHRO actually worked on a board game for onboarding, right? That's the level of investment. And it's so exciting to see the interesting things. Is it possible to experience the VR sometime for the rest of the audience?
Sure.
Yes,
sure.
That'll be really nice. With that, I'd love to sort of discuss the following with you, Zishan. And of course, crypto has a special place in our heart, all of us. But the question I have is close to sort of us as a topic, which is the employee life cycle, right? Because Babu's covered the exit, Pranali's covered the onboarding, but we have to sort of tie it all together, right? So what is your listening strategy, your continuous listening strategy been over the years, especially when we can't see our employees behind the video calls?
Sure, that's a great question, Tanmaya. I think gone are the days where you have annual employee surveys and then have a list of action items, form a team to work on those action items, and by then you solve for the action items. You have the new survey, annual survey running, right? with the current great resignations happening and a lot of issues, right, in terms of competition, etc., it's important for us to capture employee feedback and listen to employees at various intervals and make sure that all the actionizing you do, it's pretty quick, because otherwise you lose your internal talent pretty much, right? And I feel that there's two important touch points in an employee life cycle. One is during the time of interview, they ask you certain questions which actually give you great insights about an outsider's perspective, right? They could ask you questions which in turn is feedback in terms of your Glassdoor feedback, Glassdoor reviews, or it could be related to your App Store reviews, etc., and things like that. That's exactly what an outsider thinks of us, right? And second, like you rightly called out, Tanmay, some time back, the exit interview, right, is one of the most underutilized forums that we have today in the organization, right? People who leave us for better opportunities exactly know what's missing with us, and that's why they take time completing the exit form and things like that. And I would urge HR leaders here to go back, look at your exit interview feedbacks, etc., because that's something which will influence a large way in how you can actually put the culture across to your organization, right? And I think Tanmay Infero has done an incredible job in having various touch points like onboarding, performance management. When there's a manager change, etc., you automate employee listening, right? And you call it as a chief listening officer of the organization. I think that's a great initiative, right? Where you try and probably capture various life cycle, various touch points and actionize on that, because it has to be immediate, right? The last point that I have, and this is not to any way say that tools and surveys aren't great, but I feel that no tools surveys can actually replace the kind of human intervention that takes place, right? When you actually talk to employees, when HR team members go and talk to employees, you get valuable insights. They open up and share things with you which you can actually actionize. And I feel as a culture, we need to really appreciate and reward proactive retentions, which we are not doing today. We are waiting for an employee to file a separation and then go with a bouquet of offerings and see if that person would accept it. By then, you lose credibility as HR, right? You need to identify trigger well in advance, proactively retain. And I would urge the HR leaders here to reward and appreciate your team members in case there's a proactive retention, because that's far more important than retaining somebody after he or she has filed a separation. So those were quick 3 points I have from an overall listening perspective.
Thank you for the shout out, Zishan. In fact, I wrote down the words reward proactive retention. That's very new. What's going through my mind is, first of all, a tip for the audience. I see some questions where you're asking the panelists to share the problem and also to share the solution. So I would request you to just directly share the problem you're facing, so the panelists can focus on the solution as opposed to us telling you both the problem and solution. But what I do observe is a pattern in the questions that everyone seems to be talking about early attrition and attrition. I'm guessing that's because most of the hiring has happened in the last 18 months. So if any panelist wants to share some tips on how to minimize early attrition, in fact, Damita Jayasinghe has in particular asked this question. So would anyone like to answer this?
I mean, yeah, I can probably go first,
Yes,
right?
yes.
I think, according to me, hiring is the most important decision that you take in the entire employee life cycle. So you need to make sure that you hire the right set of people who are a culture fit, who are aligned to the kind of purpose and objective that you have as an organization. So it's important to first get the perfect talent into your organization. And once they are there, have regular touch points, speak to them on a regular basis, ensure that your 1 month or 2 month initial engagement is through leaders, have consistent communications with them, make sure that they feel comfortable and be open to them about the journey, right? Sometimes we end up committing certain things or talking about certain things during an interview, which once they join, they feel this absolute disconnect. So make sure that you have a role clarity, you exactly know what they would be doing once they join in. And probably after that, you shouldn't see much of a early attrition kind of an issue. If you really see observing early attrition in your organization, there's something either wrong in the onboarding efforts, or there's a mismatch between the role expectations set during the interview and what they're actually doing. So that's a big red flag, at least to me, if we come across early attrition in the organization.
Got it. Thanks for sharing, Zishan. I noticed Pranali went off mute. So Over to you.
Yeah. I just wanted to add to what Zishan is saying, that indeed, early attrition also has to be caught early. And I think mainly it's the focus on the interview process. The onboarding is, of course, important here. But one of the things we've been doing is, I think not everybody comes from the same kind of startup culture when we are hiring into our organization, for example. And it's important to be transparent about it early on, because people come in just knowing the glamorous pieces about it, but there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of craziness in the pace, etc. And we do share this because we feel that it's okay if somebody doesn't join, but when they join, we want them to stick. So catching this early is important. And one of the things we are experimenting with right now in our CTO office hires is even to open up to them the opportunity to work with us. It's virtual, of course, right now, but for a week. So, like any other employee. So, get the experience before you join and then make up your mind whether you want to be with us. And it's perfectly okay after that if you say, this is not where I want to be. But that's another way where hopefully, you've seen a little bit of it. There's more likelihood that the person will stay around longer.
Nice. I like the transparency element, Pranali. Thanks for sharing. Babu, would you like to go next?
Yeah, very quickly, early attrition happens, so that's a conviction you should have. For the
Are you
person who
telling us
asked,
to embrace it?
yeah, for the person who asked this question, and also let the hiring manager know that this is the trend which is happening. Right? So that solves your headache problem also. Otherwise, it's a constant thing. See, one of the things what you could do in terms of getting the person incubated in the organization is there's a certain language which is spoken across every organization. It's very unique, right? So the first time I came into startup, they're talking about JAS and OND. I was like, what is JAS? I know only JAZZ. What is JAS, right? So that was 10 years back. So it's better to familiarize people who are coming into your organization. Look at touch points which will make the new hire as an alien. So the first is language, which makes them alien. Second, the number of induction meeting which happens and the number of cancellations which happen. Not many of us are happy and sincere in sitting and talking to a new hire. Let's accept that, right? So there is a good hurry in ensuring we make the offer, the person joins, but as soon as the person joins, we don't attend the induction meeting. If you look at somebody who asked the question, look at the percentage of induction meeting happening versus not happening, probably they would have an answer there. There's one more thing what you could do is how many times the hiring manager is in touch with the person. There's always, even if you buy a small TV, you start thinking that did I make the right decision? You want to go and ask if all your neighbors, you want them to come and acknowledge, hey, bada TV, right? So you want that acknowledgement. The same thing applies for a new hire. Somebody has to continuously reinforce that you have made the right decision. So look at all the possible touch points which would make you an alien and fix them.
Got it. Thanks, Babu. In fact, I thought I'll share a few things that worked for us as well, even though we're just almost close to 100 folks. So our culture blew up last year, sometime in April, May, right? When suddenly, like, I as a CEO is not in favor of work from home. And then the next week I was like, guys, remote work is the future. So yes, it was a challenge. And we very recently sort of were able to touch a 74 ENPS and a 4.8 Glassdoor rating. Three things helped us. The first thing was realizing that it's actually continuous actioning. That's the end goal and not continuous listening only, right? So Zishan mentioned listening. We understood that it's not survey fatigue which bothers employees. It's actually lack of action fatigue. So at the end of the day, creating a perception of actions in your all hands and just announcing that, hey, this is the feedback we've acted on. And most importantly, this is the feedback we're not acting on. Because for some reason in India, there's a culture where giving feedback equals accepting feedback. So that's the first thing we learned. The second thing we learned was negative bias, where we're so used to being scared of the talent we're about to lose, which is your detractors or let's say the at-risk folks. It's easier to convert your passives and your fence sitters or your neutral folks to promoters and save them well in advance, as opposed to putting all your energy on someone who's already made up their mind, right? So I think that's the second thing we learned. But the third thing and the most important one was this whole HR business partner to employee ratio, right? For some reason, like one HR VP is expected to handle about 300 300:1 is the ratio, or let's say in some companies 500:1, where you are expected to handle the happiness of 300 people, their performance, their engagement score, their attrition, and so on. So the solution we learned from our customers was, what if every leader blocks 1 hour per month for culture, right? Just 1 hour in an entire month for culture, right? And if you do the math, right, like some companies are able to meet like almost their entire org just by every leader blocking 1 hour per month for culture. And where we use our own product Amber is to let Amber decide who to meet in that 1 hour, right? It's based on science and so on. But these are things that helped us. And since this was such a commonly asked question, I thought I'll chime in as well. But I see a couple more questions around employer branding and nudge employees to improve their mental health. All right, let's do mental health, mental well-being, very close to my heart. So would any panelists like to share what you're doing for well-being? I know Pranali has a 7-day thing, but if Babu, Zishan, any of you want to share as well.
Sure, I can probably take it up. So I have a couple of perspectives around mental health, right? When you go to your employees directly and say, "Hey, don't stress," right? That's not a solve at all. So we've partnered with an external agency called Your Dost, who manage the 24/7 counseling facilities for us, right? And this is not just limited to employees, but it's also extended to your family members, where people get a chance. And what Your Dost beautifully does is, it's not limited again to mental health. They have an array of offerings, and they have multiple events, initiatives that really happen. So the second part is, we're also making sure that we have people supporting each other. So when I talk to my employees at CoinSwitch, one thing that they say is, I think CoinSwitch culture is made up of great people who really want to help each other, right? When you have a problem, you go to them. My colleagues solve that problem for me. So how do you enable employees to help each other? How do you spread a culture of appreciation, making sure there's fair work-life balance? I think that's extremely important. Third, I've seen many companies think that the solve for mental health is regular employee engagement, right? It's actually the opposite. You can so there's a specific work time where they're busy, where employees are busy with their respective work, and then you want to push an employee engagement activities like a fun evening, etc. So you don't get time. You extend that post working hours, and you're actually killing the time that they actually get to spend with their family, right? So balance your own engagement. Sometimes employee engagement is just giving employees that space to spend with their own family members, giving them the time that they otherwise wouldn't get. So have a fine balance between what is accepted, what is not. Maybe have multiple forums or interest groups within, for people who have similar interest group like yoga, fitness, and things like that. Let them interact with each other, but don't push this as an agenda, because it's not going to work. It's just going to be more stressful. So that's just my initial reaction to mental health and the overall focus around that.
Thanks, Ishan. First time hearing balanced employee engagement. I've always heard it the other way around. This is very interesting. Would any of you two like to share your thoughts as well?
So I can maybe share one of the things. I mean, we've also been through a route of no meeting Fridays, and we did a 4-day week at the peak of wave 2 as well, so that employees had enough time to spend for, even if they were not impacted, but somebody in the family member or somebody in the community. So we did all of those things. We've been doing the counseling services and all of it, but it's kind of, I think it's here to stay when we have teams working multiple time zones. It's the hybrid model, and it's like it's sometimes it's unintentional, because even if you say your standard hours are 9 to 5, what is a 9 a.m. to a 5 p.m. in India is different for somebody on the East Coast in the US or the West Coast in the US. And we figured out that we have about teams with 5 or 6 different time zones. So even standardized hours is tough. So what we're looking at now is saying that every person, every individual actually with their own manager agrees on some downtime. And if it's common for at least a few people, that's great. But I can say that for me, the downtime that I need in the day is going to be, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's 2 hours where it's my time. I need it at that time because whatever, I want to cook. Somebody else might need it in the evening because they want to take care of the school studies for their children. Somebody else might say my downtime is a morning time because I'm a morning person, I need my exercise routine. It's different strokes for different folks, and we said rather than try to bucket everything and pretend like the work stress and the workload is going to go away. That's not going to happen. So let's each pick up a window that makes sense to him or her. You use that to unwind, to whatever, relax, no questions asked. So that's something now that we are looking at.
Got it. Babu, would you like to share anything?
And I agree with both Pranali and Zeshan, and you'll have to accept that this is there, right? And we don't know what is mental health, at least. Honestly speaking, about a year and a half back, anything related to health is only tied up to insurance, so nobody talks about mental health, right? And suddenly there is an awakening. Good, there is interest and understanding among people. And as I said, it's candidate-driven market. It's also an employee-driven market, right? An employee's voice out, and you listen to that, saying that hey, we need a break. We've knocked out a few things. I think it's time for us to chill. Yes. Instead of that, any such events being calendarized, if we leave it to the flow of an employee, then it works. I wouldn't say that we have done some great initiatives to counter to mental health, but these are a smaller few things which we are starting to acknowledge. It's a long road ahead as far as mental health and wellness is concerned.
Thanks, Babu. In fact, thanks, Sai Krishna Rao, for asking this wonderful question. I thought I'll share our perspective as well. So what happened sometime last year is one of our managers, we call them captains, came panicking, right? That, oh my God, one of my team members is struggling with mental health. I can't share their name, but what do I do? They're a top performer, work will get impacted, right? And that moment actually made me realize that, hey, I thought that maybe it's normalized. I thought that, okay, it's just, a very normal challenge to deal with. But in people's minds, it's like, oh my God, mental health, right? So we realized that maybe the HR is very, very adept to handling this. But let's say first time managers are not. So what we what I personally understood was that sometimes we deal with the problem as if it's some other entity, that, oh, employees have mental health challenges, but leadership has to solve it. But what we've been trying to do, and we don't know like to what extent will it work, is that, okay, establish the fact that, you know what, even I as a CEO have been taking therapy for 3 years. It's great, it's fine. We have families, we've all lost people in our families. We know what COVID has been like. We're the same, we're human beings. It's not like you're a different alien as employee and I'm a different alien as a CEO. So I think normalizing it, I thought it's normalized, right? But we still have to like continuously not just listen action, we have to continuously normalize that, hey, we care about this, and hey, we're struggling as much as you are, so feel free to open up. So I think that's worked for us. But another question Priya Darshini has asked is, how are all three of you sort of strategizing your employer branding now, right? And if possible, I would love to start with you, Babu, because even Divya is wondering, hiring 1,000 people in a week, how? So what's the employer branding game you have?
We only see the final result. The efforts are spread across a few weeks, right? So see, it's as far as branding is concerned, I'll just try to answer the hiring part first. A few changes we made. One is we made our existing managers do the interviews rather than HR being the one who's doing everything. Right? So if you're a candidate sitting in an interview and when you start understanding on the other side, here is a person who has been there, done that, taken a job rotation, and now come in to be part of the interviewing team. That gives you a lot of confidence. So that's few things we have done. We've learned it from other industries. If you look at Infy, Wipro in the early 90s and 2000, they would have a separate offer management team, onboarding team, right? So we created some smaller teams which would help us to do that. Like I mentioned earlier, right? It's go look at the processes what we have and simplify the processes so that it becomes much easier. Our talent acquisition team has been investing and harvesting over last 3 to 4 months time because campuses had different timelines, right? Every university had a different timeline because of COVID in terms of their interim exams. And we all need folks who could walk in, continuously work, and don't go back and take an exam break. So that's also a fact. So mix of all of these together kind of helped us to continue to hire in good numbers. So that's on that. As far as employer or employee branding is concerned, it's your own employees, the way you treat them, right? So other cosmetic things also work, going out in social media and doing things in a full-blown way. What we did, for example, is during COVID second wave, we just put our heads down, formed a small team internally, available 24 bar 7, possible, tried all the jugaad to ship a few things which were in dire need at that point in time, and help them kind of being like a true family with the employee. And the kind of stories what you see coming out on LinkedIn, Insta, and Facebook are not manufactured stories, are coming in by our own employees, right? So that's branding for us. If you stand with your employees, they would come out and start creating the brand what you need. That's been the strategy what we have been adopting so far.
Got it. Thanks, Babu. We'll proceed with Pranali, maybe 2,000 people.
Sure. So I agree with Babu. I think it's about letting your employees speak and be the brand ambassadors as opposed to cosmetic social media campaigns. So that's been our focus as well. And all that we say to our assertions is that whatever it is that you feel, just share it transparently. That's also one of the values that we have, transparency. So it's not that we don't want you to write about the bad stuff and only the good stuff. Whatever it is, talk about it. And that's what's been our strategy. However, the one thing I would say we do a little differently, and some people have found it maybe a little going back to age old practices, is that at least in Pune now we are all over with iCertis everywhere and hybrid, and we are now rethinking this part. How do we do it? But we've also had a lot of hoardings that we put up across the city, billboards. And folks have always talked to me, but isn't this something that happened in the 1990s? And, why do we do it now? But the idea is that those hoardings are not about, come join iCertis, but, it's like whatever is happening. I mean, we did something about, hey, get vaccinated. When the wave one hit, it was about be part of the chain and don't break the chain. So it's on different themes. It's not focused on specifically the hiring aspects, but more about how do we help the community. And I think that's the message that we're trying to give out, that we're really small if you look at it from the perspective of the entire ecosystem. But we are here. We feel we can make a difference. We feel we can add value. And if that's where you want to be and add value to the society, this is the place you can be. So that's something which is a little different from what I've seen elsewhere.
Thank you, Pranali. Before Zishan, I pass it on to you. You did remind me of something which I want to quickly screen share with the audience, because it's just the most wonderful thing I've learned in the last 9 years. So I'm guessing everyone should be able to see my screen now. The concept of radical candor, where Pranali said that, okay, don't just talk about what's positive, also talk about what's negative. This concept changed my life, and I want everyone to know about this maybe. So it's beautiful how we're sort of brought up in a culture. It's unfortunate how we're brought up in a culture where we care so much that we don't challenge directly, right? And that's sort of ruinous empathy, and that doesn't lead to any change, right? Whereas what Pranali is recommending is that, if you care so much, be honest and challenge directly. And when we say challenge, be very, very transparent, honest with, okay, what the culture is all about, what needs improvement. But I thought everyone should know the concept of radical candor. You can Google it. It's by Kim Scott, and it's life-changing. But thanks for bringing that up, Pranali. But Zishan, I'd love to sort of hear your thoughts as well now.
Sure. Thank you so much, Tanmay, for sharing that. I've made a note though. So I think employer branding, just to add to what Pranali and Babu mentioned, right? Encouraging employees to just go and give feedback. right? I think it's typically like the football goalkeeper rule, right? The moment, no matter how many goals he saves, nobody talks about it. The moment something goes wrong, then everybody like goes and complains, right? It's important for us to encourage employees to just go and give feedback. It could be a positive experience, a negative experience, but giving feedback is really important. That's one. Second, I feel that I'm a great believer of creativity, and I feel that um, employer branding as a subject, right, or as a topic, has a lot of lot of innovations or creativity that you could do. You can talk of an initiative that we recently launched, right? This is to increase our offer conversion and also to help the community in the large. So we launched an initiative called Circle of Hope. Through this initiative, with every employee who joins our organization, we will provide financial grant to a underprivileged women to restart her business in the pandemic, right? During the pandemic, a lot of them had to sell their push cart or basic vegetables, fruits that they had to feed their own family, and now they're struggling for fund. So we thought, instead of just making this as a CSR initiative, let's tie this to a beautiful cause, where today any employee who joins the organization, on behalf of him or her, we also provide financial grant to somebody to restart. So we're not promising super bikes though, but we can surely help somebody with the push cart and try to really make a difference from a community standpoint. So I think those are just subtle ways where you can bring in a big difference, attach the employees, right, into your company and the purpose of the company.
That's wonderful, and I'm taking so many notes in these in this call on what to do. Reminds me of this thing I learned from a fellow founder last year, where instead of the company directly making donations in the time of the pandemic, what we did is we allocated a certain amount to each employee and let them decide where to donate. Right, so that way we had about 170 to 100 folks sort of donating in 70 different places on what mattered to them. And now we've made it a regular practice. Every new joiner can donate a certain amount to an organization they care about. But a couple of points I've also learned with regards to employer branding. First one I learned as a CEO from Y Combinator, which is an accelerator in the US, which also was responsible for the founding of Airbnb, was a concept called vertebrae points, right? And vertebrae stands for your backbone, right? So what are those 3 or 4 backbone points, vertebrae points that matter the most in your pitch? And that we applied in our employer branding. That what are the 3-4 points you want your candidates to tell their family, the candidates to tell their friends, and the same 3-4 points that you want them to tell. Because we're so used to puking out like 100 things that are good about us. When the candidate goes, they tell the most like least important things to their friends and family. So how do you maintain consistent information all the way from the candidate to their friends to the family and just have it flow through and through? So that was a very interesting thing I learned. And the second thing is our customers gave so much feedback that we automated something where if someone gives a 5-on-5 to Amber as a positive feedback, they will be automatically nudged to go to Glassdoor and copy paste their feedback. Right, and that's how we achieved a 4.8, to be honest. So I hope this helps everyone. But I do see a couple of interesting questions here, and I do want to address this question. Shruti hasn't mentioned who asked it, but many employees are leaving because they have reached a saturation point in their current job, so they're looking to switch their career. Very interesting point, because just yesterday I was having a discussion with our leadership team. And we figured out that sometimes we're so focused on identifying moments of change that cause distress. Sometimes stagnation in itself is a moment of distress, right? That lack of change is distress. But very, very good question. Would anyone like to sort of share how you've dealt with stagnation in career growth?
Sure, I can go first. So I think we are blessed that we are growing at a very high pace. So there's no dearth of new opportunities within the organization. So internal movements is what we encourage a lot. Even when we open up a position, it's like, look within, is there somebody who's even 70% ready for that position? And then we can move that person up. And that's where we want to be as agile as possible and not wait for, annual cycles for a change in role. So that's a push that we're doing. I fully agree that, saturation point is what just makes somebody leave. The second part to it is also there's an attempt that that we are making, and I see a lot of it happening elsewhere as well, to define growth differently. Because often I think we get stuck in this paradigm of growth can only be vertical, and it can only mean more team members to handle, and we can't offer that every time. So how do you make lateral movements, horizontal growth attractive? And that's what we are attempting to share across the organization, that if you get multiple skills, work across different units, your uh, longer term, your career trajectory is bound to be faster. The third is also, I think, a lot of times you need to calibrate the expectations a bit for employees, because it's you do get a lot of the millennials where it's been a year since I got my promotion, what's happening, I'm not growing, kind of feedback. And that's a tough one. So how do you do that calibration? I think there's a lot of the career conversations that need to happen. And sometimes people managers don't have so much time, so we're trying to create that time, but we're also trying to back it up by other online. We're exploring some online support where the manager can actually team up with an external and manage these kind of conversations. Then it's a bit like what you said, Tanmay, about who the manager needs to talk to, so the rest of it gets addressed, and then there are a few people the manager can reach out to and have a deeper conversation around this.
Got it. Babu, go ahead.
Yeah. So if you're a specialist, what Pranali said is go by the book. I don't think there are any more options in terms of looking at managing an employee who feels that he or she is getting saturated in the job, right? Yes, there are very, very limited options. The only thing is, why do you want to keep someone who feels they are saturated within the organization, right? So that's a question also we can ask. And if it's a specialist who is not willing to look at enlarging or their own skills, and they would really want the meaning of saturation is that less salary and no promotion. That's how saturation translates into. So if you could really figure out what is it, it's okay to let go also, is what I would say. So let's not be too fearful of managing employees is something. This is a community with whom I can share and just letting them.
Babu, I love your answers, because I think you've somehow embraced some realities, and you look at such Zen peace that, okay, this is I can do in my sleep. But thank you, Babu. Zishan, would you like to share something?
No, I think I'm good. I would just like plus one to what Pranali mentioned, the concept of internal job posting, creating meaning around the work and giving them cross-functional experience is something that I wanted to speak, which Pranali already covered. So I don't have additional points to add.
Got it. Something I've recently learned about stagnation is when sometimes someone says that, okay, they're not liking their current role, some employees perceive it that you're trying to retain them, right? And that whole, when on the receiving side, when like, is this person suggesting something just because they want to retain me, right? So what helped us is having a neutral party as an external coach for extreme cases, where sometimes a neutral party is able to give unbiased let's say growth options as opposed to biased growth options. So that's been very helpful. And the second bit is I think sometimes employees operate on just two spectrums, which is hey, I'm a generalist, which is like jack of all trades, 10 things, or maybe I'm a specialist, I only know one thing, right? But sometimes it's important to help employees realize that you can specialize in two things, right? A coder who can sell, or a marketing person who can code, right? Like those are some phenomenal combinations. But like just sort of like Babu said, changing the definition of what specialization means or stagnation means could be very helpful. But that's that. I do see a couple more questions, and I'm being told we have 7 minutes. So folks, if you have any questions, this is your moment. Please do ask. All right, so Seema Lohari asks, one thing that is really working for the speakers to create a fabric to retain and attract talent. Okay, I love this question. In fact, panelists, if you remember, we were discussing this last time. Let me sort of reword this question. what is the one or two things over the last 2 years that you're just proud of as an initiative that just smashed it in your company that worked? It could be a perk, it could be a policy, it could be a campaign, it could be anything. And this is where your individual, I don't know, creativity will come out. No pressure. I'm just curious to know what you have in mind. Anything that worked for you.
Okay, I can share. Post pandemic, we came up with a framework which we called the Four Rings framework, which was in sequential. You start by taking care of yourself, then your family, then the community, and then the business. So it was in that order. And it sounds very simplistic, but we took that framework, of course, we put it in a good format, what it meant, etc. Took it out to all employees and said that, hey, make your own decisions based on this. So you need to take care of yourself first, so you're able to focus on your work and your loved ones, and in that order. So I think that really helped us in keeping people back with us, and even with this great resignation year, etc. I think we've still we do have a lot of attrition, but it's still not as much as the figures that I hear otherwise. And I think it's also because we people have been feeling empowered to take certain calls and decisions without having to wait for some centralized thing coming their way. They've been able to make choices. They've been able to give back to the community and do all of the other things that matter. And I think that's really helped us even while attracting people. A lot of people in our own survey have called out that this made them feel that we really cared about what they wanted and how they wanted to do it, as opposed to the organization pushing it top down.
Love it. Especially the four things you mentioned in that order: self, family, community, and then the company. Is that correct? I
That's
just took
right.
a note. Thanks, Pranali. Zishan, please go ahead.
Sure. So I spoke of Circle of Hope. I think something that I'm personally proud of is we launched a very similar initiative back at Intuit called the Girl Child Project, where we educated a girl child with every women employee joining the organization. And the kind of conversion that we saw, right, for people who are holding offers with leading companies and say, I want to join Intuit or CoinSwitch because you have a commune, I can help the community through, that is incredible. And so I feel that's something which is amazing. The other thing is I love the fact that leaders today, right, are investing a lot of time in talking to employees, right, and speaking to them on a regular basis. For example, the CEO at CoinSwitch, Ashish Singhal, spends 2 hours every week, has an open calendar for employees to block and talk to him on anything that they wish to. And the last couple of months have been like full, so in case people have additional time, he goes ahead and gives that time. I feel that for me as a HR head, coming in directly from a CEO saying, I want to meet the employees, I want to keep this 2 hours open on my calendar, understand what are some of the issues and proactively try and engage with them, I think was the big move there. So I feel leaders need to take more ownership, which is clearly a good way to retain talent, and have a community driven thing for all that you do, because you'll see a lot of value in that.
And I'm
Thanks.
totally copying that policy. The girl child for every woman hire. Thank you for sharing. All right, Babu. Yes.
And the Four Rings is also fascinating. So something similar is what we did. I mean, it's more around leadership empathy or manager empathy, I would call, making most of the people in our organization understand that. So, for example, after this call, all of us walk into our homes, right? Moving away from this room is like you walk in directly into your home, walk and bump into your family. Not the case when you're working in organizations. So anything you do, like if you're asking somebody to leave the organization, do it on an email, not on a call. Right? If you're appreciating someone, make it very loud so that even the family can listen to. These things, when we started driving, we started seeing change in the organization. Besides few other initiatives where we launched a fund which would help kids who lost either of the parents in pandemic. We're helping them in their education up until +2 and so on and so forth. But apart from this, these are some of the things we do.
Thanks, Babu. Thanks, everyone. These are some amazing ideas. I thought I'd conclude with just one tip I always like to give. We're so used to just throwing problems on people. So if I would recommend for you to throw your problems on products out there and maybe expect more. Like, I don't know, whoever you're evaluating, right? Whatever tool it is, please increase your expectations, because customer success platforms, engineering platforms, sales platforms, product platforms have been 10x ahead because there was so much budget over there. But finally, HR is in the spotlight. So please 10x your expectations, be ruthless on HR tech founders, because there is a vision we all share. We want to change the face of the community. I just want to show you one slide before I hand off to Drishti now, is that at least for us, our vision is, how can we give you a holistic view of your employee in one shot, from their very first interview till the day they leave, have nudges to managers through and through wherever things are going wrong. And please, if I ever bump into you anywhere, challenge me, 10x your expectations, because we want to change the face of this industry and we want to change it from India, right? Enough with the US companies and US products changing the world. So thank you so much to all panelists for making time today. Thank you, People Matters. Thank you, Lakshmi, for making this happen. Back to you, Drishti.
Thank you. Thank you for this amazing, insightful conversation. Thank you, Babu, Pranali, Zishan, for those examples that you shared, and Tanmay for moderating it so beautifully. I think our audience always loves these authentic conversations, which are so insightful as well. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to our audience for keeping it interesting with their questions.
All right,
All right.
thank you.
All right, with this, we'll wrap up the session. To our audiences, stay tuned to your inbox for more informations and more upcoming sessions. Take care, stay safe.